What is up, everybody? What's up, comic book community? And Merry Christmas. This is the Christmas episode of the Weekly Pull List. As you could see, this is not a live show, but it is a show nonetheless. And this is a special show because with us is the CEO of ShortBoxed. He is here to discuss a little bit about his app, some things that are happening in the future, and all that great stuff in regards to ShortBoxed and how ShortBoxed is so great on this community that you're going to love it. So I'm going to take this opportunity right now to bring him out, and we'll talk a little bit of comics, and then we'll talk a little bit about ShortBoxed. Okay, guys? So with us here is none other than Gene Miguel, the CEO of ShortBoxed. What's going on, Gene?
Hey, how's it going, Izzy? Merry
Good.
Christmas, happy
Merry
holidays
Christmas.
to you and
Happy
everyone.
holiday. Yeah, it's Christmas.
What a year.
Sorry, I know what. Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Right? What a year indeed. So, Gene, before we start talking a little bit about ShortBox and everything, how good the app is, I've used it plenty of times. I'll tell you right now. Um,
Thank you. By the
I
way,
want,
folks, I didn't
yeah,
pay him to say that. So,
no, he did not pay me to say that, and trust me, he didn't give me this logo. I picked it up myself. So, but tell me a little bit about yourself before we even get into ShortBox.
yeah. So again, thank you for that amazing intro. I'm Gene Miguel. I'm the CEO and co-founder of ShortBox. You know, I do get a lot of folks and a lot of customers who ask me, are you an actual, comic book nerd? Are you an actual like comic book people? Or are you actual comic book people? And
Hmm.
obviously that is a resounding yes. So
Hmm.
first and foremost, I am a lifelong comic book nerd, and I say that from a place of love and passion for this hobby
Hmm.
and this community. I've been reading and collecting comic books for as long as I can remember. Some of my
Hmm.
earliest memories were sneaking into my older brother's bedroom and stealing his comic books. The first comic book that I actually remember reading was Frank Miller's The Dark Knight series. Um,
What a
definitely,
place to start.
definitely not appropriate for a 4-year-old kid to be reading those books. There's definitely a lot of blood in them, but yeah, that was where I started my love for comic books, and it's just been comic books have been with me my entire life.
Mhm,
It's something that I identify with, something that I consider part of myself, and I'm sure you and a lot of the people watching this video
mhm,
probably feel very similar. I think it's something that has always been with me through my whole life, and of course there's periods of life where maybe you fall out of the hobby, you get back into it,
mhm.
or you pass by a random comic book shop and kind of reignites that, then you get back into it, and it's just, but the comics have always been with me since the beginning.
Yeah, I feel the same way. So yesterday we were doing a corporate event for my job. It's
Mhm.
the typical holiday event, right? And we go to this place that used to be a Lord and Taylor's, a closed out Lord and Taylor's. Now it's like an office for Amazon, and they
Mhm.
rented out one of the rooms. And right outside, and I'm in New York, and I've been pretty much everywhere in New York, right? It's the heart of New York City, over by 39th Street and Fifth Avenue, I believe it is.
Mhm.
There's a comic book shop called Montessori Comics, which I never knew
I'm
existed.
not familiar. I thought I've
Yeah,
been to every shop in New
same
York,
here.
but
I'm like,
that
I
doesn't
see
ring a
this
bell.
one place. Unfortunately, I completely forgot about it and I never went. I was saying to myself, oh, when I leave, I'm gonna go check it out. But now that I know it's there, sooner or later I'm gonna jump in and see what's the story. But I've never heard of this place, so I'm with you on that. Whenever I have an opportunity to go to a comic book shop, even when I'm not home or local, I want to find a comic
Oh,
book shop.
that's
That's one of
that's
those
a
things.
must for me.
Yeah.
Even just outside of, I travel a lot for business, travel all over the country, but even just for personal travel, even prior and pre, Shortbox was doing a lot of business travel around the world, around the country. I always made it a point. First thing I do is start Googling, where are the comic shops in the city that I've been in, and it's just I love just interacting with shop owners and collectors from all over the world and all over the country. It's so cool, kind of seeing the differences in the various regions.
Yeah, and then, like the attitude and the experiences as well. When you walk in, some guys are open arms, like come on in. The other ones are like, "What are you doing in my shop?"
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember,
yeah.
I remember one comic book shop that I used to go to. The guy was he was like upset at the world type of guy, right? And I remember I had a pull list with him, and this particular week I didn't need all the books that were in the pull list, so I just told him, I said, "Hey, if I'm going to put these back," right? They were on the shelf, so it wasn't like they were important books like that. But he was like, "No, you purchased it. You taking these
Wow.
books. These are the books you're taking." And then I was like, "Okay." So when he wasn't looking, I just put the books back.
Right, right.
You know what I mean?
That's a funny story that happened, but that's also super unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
It sort of makes me sad to think how many new comic book readers or collectors has just that one person scared off with just the way that he reacts to that way instead of, being, more welcoming to folks in the community. Because I mean, let's face it, we want more people joining the hobby. It's something that I
Mhm,
hope everyone wants to share with other people. And there've been many decades of the industry having to shake off that sort of stigma. The typical Simpsons comic book guy
yeah, I
or
was
the,
thinking the
the
same
grumpy
guy.
the grumpy old man.
Mhm.
And it's like, hopefully, I think things are a lot better now. But we've
I
all dealt
agree.
with shops like that for sure. Like I'm sure we all have.
Yeah, and and here in New York, where I have plenty, I have Forbidden Planet, I have Midtown Comics.
Yeah,
It's every time you go to one of these shops, the owners now are like, "Hey, come on in, whatever you want, to go for it. You want to record here, you're welcome to." So, when I started the channel, that was something I used to do. I used to go to like as many comic book shops and record a
that's great.
segment in the show, and it got crazy after a while. I was like, I can't do this every week, so we ended up doing the live stream, which ends up working. But I'll do the tours again here and there
Yeah.
because a lot of people don't get to see it. The place I personally want to go that I've never been to is Mile High. So I hear a lot
Uh,
of good things about Mile High,
I've
and I
been to
definitely
Mile
want to
High.
go.
It's an experience. It's
Mhm,
worth if you ever find your way
mhm,
out to Denver.
mhm,
It's definitely worth popping in. Just the sheer scope
mhm.
and size of the place, and just
Yeah.
seeing literally millions of comic books in one place.
Yeah.
It's just really cool to see.
It's like Disneyland for us, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So cool. So what characters drew you in? Like you mentioned Batman, it was your first exposure to comics, but
yeah.
I see a Spider-Man, I see an Iron Man in the background. So tell me a little bit about the different kind of characters that you like, superhero comics, genres, or anything like that.
Yeah, honestly, it's a little bit of everything, right? But my favorite character of all time is Batman.
Mhm,
Batman is my guy. He's the I will always be reading, the main Batman title.
mhm,
Some of the favorite books in my personal collection are
mhm,
Batman titles. But again, I mentioned earlier that as a collector, whether it's collecting or even if it's just reading comics, you you change, you evolve, you mature, your tastes, kind of change. And but growing up, I grew up in the late 80s and the early 90s. And so I got a big mix of I have such a soft spot in my heart for kind of like the indie comics from the 80s. That
mhm,
always is going to be like really, really special. Obviously Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I'm a
mhm,
massive, massive, massive fan of Usagi Yojimbo from Stan Sakai.
mhm.
Quick shout out to Stan. I think he is one of the greatest
Still doing it
creators
today, right?
who has been operating at the highest level for
Mhm,
almost 40 years now. It's
mhm,
crazy, and he has not stopped at all. So he is probably one of my favorite creators of all time. But from a collecting standpoint, now I collect Golden Age books. That's what I collect. I love the old stuff. I love
mhm,
Timely's and Alex Schomburg and Lou Fine and Matt Baker, and my
mhm,
all-time favorite Golden Age artist is LB Cole. And so there's just something about the Golden Age that just gets me like super excited, especially because they're so rare. And
mhm,
even to this day, I am still discovering and seeing books I've never seen before, in my life. And so that's exciting to me as a collector. But of course, I still have love for all the Silver Age heroes, the
mhm.
ones that started it all. And so really, it's a little bit varying. You ask me this question every day of the week, and you'll probably get 7 different answers from me.
That's awesome. So yeah, so I feel the same way. Like the golden age is very different in the way that when you look at it, it's kind of it came back to where we are today, right? Where there's so many different genres of comics,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of people didn't realize that the golden age wasn't about superheroes. In fact,
No.
superheroes was just a small portion
Yeah.
of it when it first came out. So you got the pulp heroes, and then you got the romance, the war stories. So they pretty
Romance
much did it
comics
all.
were arguably the largest and best-selling comics, and they're read mostly by women and
Yeah.
girls, because they were just on every newsstand. And so, yeah, that's a great point. Is that we've kind of gone full circle. That it started
Mhm.
off with many, many genres. We went all in on superheroes for 50 years, and then now I think we're like in another sort of renaissance period of
Mhm.
there's something for everyone.
Yeah,
which I think is
exactly.
also fantastic.
Which is great because now it reflects on TV and movie
Yeah,
because you got comic book movies that people don't even know are comic book movies. You know what I'm
right.
saying? There's like which the one that's a history of violence.
Mm-hmm.
You tell somebody that's a comic book, they're like, no. It's like, yeah, it's a comic book movie.
That's
Movies like
often
that.
the first thing I ask myself if there's like a new show on a streaming service that I'm not
Mhm.
familiar with. I just assume it came from a book that I've never read or heard of at this point. That's just how pervasive it is. And
Mhm,
to that point, again, what I love about sort of the hobby right now and comics in general right now is that comics are so pervasive and they're such an important part of just popular culture today. And just as a kid and just an adolescent growing up, I would have never imagined being able to see all these heroes on the big screen and at home.
mhm.
It's just that I love it. I'm sure a lot of people feel that there's sort of an oversaturation of superhero films.
Yeah,
I'm the opposite.
you just
I
give
have
me
no
more.
shame. Give it to me all. I grew up my whole life where comics weren't cool, and it wasn't cool to be a comic book nerd, and it wasn't necessarily something that I sort of shouted from the rooftops, and now it's just so satisfying that comic book culture is mainstream culture now, and so I'm like, you know what, give it to me. I may not watch it all, I may not consume it all, but as long as there's
It's a
something
lot to
for everyone.
consume now.
Yes,
It
it's only
really
it's,
is.
there is a lot, but the good thing is that there truly is something for everyone these days, and,
Mhm.
and I think that's awesome.
All right. So now let's go into Shortbox with that question. So what brought you to create a Shortbox, the app? You said co-creator, so you and your partner created Shortbox. So tell me a little bit about that story.
Yeah, what so I found a short box with my business partner and good friend BJ. He's our CTO and co-founder. He is also a lifelong collector, and we've been friends for many years. And so, again, comic books are sort of something that we both bonded over and became real
Mhm,
close over. And we actually many people don't realize this, but even though we launched Shortbox the app almost 4 years ago,
mhm.
we actually created Shortbox the brand, the name as a blog over 10
Mhm.
years ago, and
Yeah.
this was just our way to start connecting with the community, start building community. Just it was just a way for us to sort of nerd out about comics and sort of connect with other people all over the world and all over the country. And while blogging, we became part-time comic book dealers. We actually hit the convention circuit, traveled all over
Mhm,
the country, setting up at cons, and it was really through that process that we got to build relationships with collectors and sellers and dealers and comic book shops all over the country. And
mhm,
really through that process we kind of got to peek behind the curtain and
mhm.
see really just how poorly and inefficiently the entire comic book secondary market is being run. And
Mhm,
it really hasn't changed in 20, some may argue, 30 years since the advent of eBay in the mid 90s. And for us, while we are, very passionate about comic books, for our professional careers, we both have careers in tech. We both are from the Bay Area and living and working in Silicon Valley and San Francisco. I've worked in technology my entire career. Same with BJ, and just as software people, as technologists, as hackers, and just builders, we
mhm,
just could not wrap our heads around the fact that the entire industry is being run the same way it has been for the past 20 years. And as sort of like software people and systems builders, that was so frustrating to us. So as much as this was born out of a place of love and passion and respect for the hobby, just
mhm,
as equally it was born out of just pure frustration of just how bad and antiquated the entire
mhm.
secondary market has been running. If you really think about this, nothing really has changed in 20 plus years. People are still buying and selling the same way they have been almost 30 years ago, and it's very, very frustrating. And so really we needed to do something about it. We
Mhm.
sort of combined our professional expertise with our passion for comic books and our passion for this community and for community building. And we kind of decided to do something about that, and that led us down the path of building Shortbox the app, which you know today.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that about Shortbox, because when I first saw Shortbox, I didn't notice that it was an app.
Hmm.
Yeah, right. Because when you would when I would go to convention, and trust me, I've been to a lot, um, a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I would see Shortbox, but in my brain, it didn't come to the point of, oh, it's an app, or it's just another dealer. To me, it was just like, oh, it's just another one of these guys that are just in a booth trying to sell something comic book related, right?
Mhm.
And stuff. But it wasn't until most recently, because I've been like many people, I'm the same thing. I'm away from comics. I'm back from comics, right? I come in from since '87 collecting comics, right? And for a very long time, I had a hiatus from comic books because I got sick and tired of the way the comic book industry was getting,
Mhm.
where and I'm to a certain point I'm still upset by it,
Yeah.
by like the 101 variants, that kind of stuff,
We could spend
or
an hour, talking about that, by the way.
yeah, exactly, or and the problem I have with the variants, it's not so much the variants, it's the fact that I don't, and I'm not picking on them for in any way. I don't need an art germ cover, right, of some sexy lady for a Spider-Man book that she's not even in. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
That kind of thing really irritates me.
Right.
I like it when the cover is telling me it's like a panel within the comic,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like the way it always has been prior.
Almost like
And
a
it
preview of what's inside the book itself.
exactly, and it's usually the artist that's doing the work inside. So today it's a little different where it's there's a lot of people out there that are not being recognized because of that factor,
Mhm.
right? Everybody's buying this book because it's an art germ or it's because it's a John Jang. And these guys are phenomenal creators,
Yeah.
but it's the people inside that are doing the real work of
Yeah,
spending
if anything, though,
days.
that's very fair that it's almost unfair to the creators, the writers,
Mhm.
and sequential artists inside.
Yeah,
That the book is being bought for the cover, not necessarily for what they're actually creating,
mhm.
between the covers.
And in some instances, no one's looking at the inside because the minute they get it, they're gonna put it to get slabbed.
Right.
And that kind of irritates me in a way. I get it, and I'm not saying you can't do that. You do what you want with your comics,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you want to give credit to where credit's due to these people that are working really hard. It's like going to the movies and you walk away from the end credits, and all these people work on it, and you don't care about those
Right.
names, but someone cares about those names, right?
Right, right.
So
At
you
the end of
know,
the day, everything starts and ends with the stories, and
exactly.
that fuels everything else,
Hmm.
from there. If you don't mind me asking, I
Yeah,
would
sure.
actually love to hear what brought you back into comics, most recently. Because again,
So
everyone throughout life, you kind of go through like periods where
yeah,
you're in it, you're out it. I would actually love to hear your story and like
so
what
so
brought you
my
back.
story is interesting because I always have my foot in and my foot out, right? So beforehand, the way I would be a casual comic book person and not get comic books was during the era of Wizard, right? So
Hmm.
when Wizard was out, I religiously got every issue of Wizard to the very end,
Yeah.
right? So when Wizard end, at that moment is when I kind of end,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I was away from the industry for a very long time. I was not involved in the comic book boom of the 20s,
Hmm.
right? So I got involved 2 years ago, and the reason why is I was planning on doing something with I wanted to do a YouTube channel, and originally I had plans to do a different type of YouTube channel, not comic book related or anything like that.
Hmm.
So I wanted to do it, but I wanted to do it alongside of some people, but they weren't interested in any way. So I said, well, you don't want to do this? And they said, no. So I said, okay, let me go back to my passion, which is comics and wrestling. So it really was
Nice.
comic and wrestling, right? It's a Venn diagram and stuff. So that's where the creation of IzzyVerse is all about. A lot of people think it's a play on your name, but it's really a play on the multiverse. So it's
Hmm.
like my multiverse.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
what yeah, exactly. So it's like comics and wrestling and anything else in between. Then I realized the world of YouTube is like you got to stick to one niche, right? You could talk about one thing, but you got to focus on that one
I would
because
think that there's a lot of overlap between, comic
there
book fans and
is.
wrestling fans. There's got to be
It
like that Venn diagram probably has a massive
it,
overlap
it,
between the
it
two.
exists, but the problem is like for YouTubers to grow,
Right.
you kind of have to stick to one,
Yeah.
right? Because the minute you go to the other, let's just say the other gives you like 1,000 views. Well, guess what? They're expecting you to give you more of that one.
Right.
So what ended up happening is I wanted to get back to comic books. So what I thought was interesting enough was that, you know what, no one knows about Wednesday comics except the comic geeks, right? Like Wednesday, the pull list, like what to pick up. Like for me, it's like what do you pick up? So my first take on it was to do something that on a weekly basis tell people what new books are coming out and then pick it. So that's when I started learning about the 101 variants. So I didn't even know about the retailer exclusives type
Right.
of things then. But it was like, okay, so now I got something going on here. And then little by little, it was just really getting back to it. I started drawing again because I used to I used to have published work, nothing big, some indie stuff I did here and there.
That's awesome.
Um, so I got back into that. I got back into drawing. I got back into the comic books, getting really in depth with comics. Coming from a field of an artist, I'm all about seeing an artist, recognizing who's that artist. And
Mhm.
what was really hard for me when I came back was like they all looked the same to me. You know what I mean? It's like you could clearly identify a John Romita versus a Arthur Adams versus a
Mhm.
Frank Miller. Those guys are easily recognizable at that
Right.
time. Today, if you're not examining it,
Right.
you really
There's
can't
like
tell.
the house style pretty
Yeah,
much.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that it's like the house style is returning, but there are those standouts. There's a few guys out there that still stand out from a crowd.
I
I
would love to
mentioned,
hear who are some of your favorites
well,
of
John
these.
Jenks immediately stands out,
He's
right?
awesome.
He's
He's awesome.
awesome.
He's
I
he's out in the Bay Area where we're based out of
Yeah.
also. So shout out to
So
John.
he's another one that immediately stands out for me. Another one of the newer guys for me that stands out is Dan Mora
Hmm.
because he has that classic look to it,
Yeah.
but yet at the same time it's still, it's still new. So there's this retro feel about his look.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Um, and of course, this guy's always in the top 10, and I love it because he's my favorite artist, Arthur Adams. So
Oh
whenever I
yeah.
see Arthur Adams, I'm like, sold. So those are the guys I
Another
really
Bay Area
love.
guy, by the way.
Yeah.
Art Adams is out here.
Adams, dude, man, what I do, I think my wife got me an Arthur Adams omnibus, so
Nice.
for Christmas. So I'm excited to open that today. But yeah, those are the guys that I like, but I still like I'm an interior guy. So I
Mhm.
love to open the book and see the art, the work, the sequential work. I know a lot of people are hating on John Romita Jr. these days. I don't think it's his best work today, but there's something about what he does in storytelling that's amazing.
Mhm.
And when I try to point it out to people, that's when they notice it. So sometimes you got to see it. Like there are guys out there. Unfortunately, there are sequential artists that they're good artists, but they're not telling you a good story. They're
Right.
all over the place.
Right.
So that's the kind of stuff that I like looking into. I love looking at artists, and of course, writers are writers,
Yeah.
and things like that. So there's some good stuff out there. But yeah, it brought me back in, and I really got involved again. I started doing conventions again. I always went to New York. New York, I always go, but I started going to the smaller shows.
Mhm.
I started learning a little bit more about what the vendors do. So what's really great is that now the Izzyverse, even though there is a little section of the wrestling that's there, but now it's mostly about comic books in
Mhm.
all different walks, and I have the ability to speak of it as a reader. I have the ability to speak of it as a creator. I have the ability to even speak as a seller, even though I per se am not a seller, but I'm surrounded by sellers.
Right.
I
Right.
talk to sellers both in the retail, both in the shops and things like that. So that's how the Izzyverse is now. It is a multiverse within the comic book world, which is really awesome to talk about because you could put yourself in any little corner
Oh
and be
yeah.
like, okay, I can talk to you about this. I can talk to you about that.
That's
So
cool.
that's the cool thing I got for it, which
Speaking
is
speaking
awesome.
of wrestling and comics, apologies if this is
Yeah,
too
no
obvious
worries,
of a
man.
question. Have you read Do a Powerbomb by Daniel Warren
That's
Johnson?
so Daniel Warren Johnson. Do a Powerbomb was one of the first books that I read when I came back.
Mm, mhm.
Instantly love it.
Yeah.
Instantly because his art style is unique. His
Yeah.
storytelling is amazing, right? So he knows how to tell a story in a heartwarming way. And usually when you get wrestling comic books, they don't really do well
Right.
because it's like, who cares, right? This one actually
Oh,
worked.
it pulled on your emotional strings, and just like
Exactly. It
again,
just
Daniel Warren's art plus,
mhm,
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was Mike Spicer who did the colors, but like the colors
mhm.
in the book are just
Yeah. It's really
stunning.
raw. It's
Yeah,
raw. That's how
it's
I
just
look at it.
that was probably my. I didn't read it issue to issue. I only read the
Mhm.
trade when it came out this year, but
Yeah.
I would say that was probably my favorite read from this
Mhm.
year. I
For
just thought it was great.
from the past year, the other book that really took me was 8 Billion Genies. Fell in
Oh,
love with that.
that's a close, probably second for me. I think both those
Yeah.
were like two of my favorites this year. So
It's like the indie books. Is like because I'm a superhero guy. I'm like a Marvel DC guy. But
mhm.
those two books, when I got them, when I started reading 8 Billion
Oh, they're
Beings, I
so
was
good.
like, all I was saying to myself is like, why no one thought of this before? You know what I mean? It was literally it took this long for someone to come up with this concept, and what Charles Soule did in the writing
Yeah,
was
he's
genius.
a fantastic writer.
So look, I picked up Wish World on New York Comic Con. I got it slab,
Mhm.
and I'm happy to know that it's not even in the census yet.
Oh wow,
So I got
nice.
my 9.8, not even in the census. So that was those were the two big books that really took me by surprise when I started reading comic books, and
That's
I came
awesome. Yeah,
in
that's so
right at
funny.
the
Me
perfect
too.
time.
Those are probably two of my favorite reads this year. And again, Image is not paying us to say this, but if you haven't read those two books, everyone watching
Yeah,
this, you
they're
should
on trade
definitely.
now. I'm a
Yeah,
comic by comic guy, so
yeah,
I don't have many. I don't have a lot of trades unless unless it's Watchmen, of course. But for me, I'm a week to week kind of guy. It's tough to stay current because there's just a lot of
there's
influx of
so
comic
much. Yeah,
books that comes out. I should know because I do this every week. It's like Marvel with 22 comics, DC has 15 comics. I'm like, how can you keep up? And they're not cheap anymore. That's the problem. That's the other issue I have with comics,
yeah,
where the cost of a comic book is not the price of, a candy bar anymore.
yeah. I
It's
mean,
like
it's prohibitive for kids to just go to their shop and pick up an issue when an issue is 4.99. It's a little
exactly, and 4.99 is the
pricey.
cheap price, right? That's
Right.
the least you're gonna pay for it. When you see an issue 7.99, or you see an issue that's 9.99 or 14.99, you know what
Right.
I mean?
That's
That's
crazy.
the kind of stuff that's insanity to me.
Yeah, I'm the
So,
opposite, right? I am a trade waiter now, just
mhm.
out of necessity because there's just so much to keep up with, and it's just hard it's hard to keep up with everything that's going
Mhm.
on. And next thing you know, I'm behind by 3 months. I'm like, I should have just waited for the trade. So it's just
I can't. I still have the book, so if I'm behind, I just leave it there, and then okay, the time will come. I'm just gonna start, and I'm just gonna binge it. You know what I
yeah,
mean? That's how I do it because obviously there's more value in the singles
yeah,
than they are in the trades. So that's the other way I look at it from that perspective too.
right.
So let's go ahead and talk more about short box in itself. So
Yeah, I
how would
derailed it completely, but I
nah,
really
nah,
appreciate you
nah.
sharing. I
Trust
really did
me.
want to hear your story, so I
No,
appreciate you sharing
I
them with
love
us.
it. I love this conversation. This conversation is perfectly fine. So when we come to Shortbox, so the idea, how would you describe Shortbox to someone that's never utilized Shortbox? Because it's not eBay, it's not whatnot. What is it?
Yeah, I mean, the first and foremost, at its most basic level, um, it's an app. So first of all, it's an app. ShortBox is not a website. It's an app for buying and selling comic books. Sort of, period. That's kind of it. When you want to go a little deeper, we say, and I truly do believe this, and this isn't just sort of corporate mumbo jumbo, but it is the easiest and safest way to buy and sell comic books,
Mhm,
purely from user experience and intuitiveness and sort of policy design and everything all together. It just makes buying and selling comic books incredibly easy. When we first launched, it was only graded books, but this year we expanded the platform to include raw books too. And so we've just been growing at kind of breakneck pace over the past couple of years. And so really for the app is for any collector out there who buys and sells comic books. That
mhm.
is it. If anyone here watching, which is probably 100% of the people watching this video right now, if you buy and or sell, comic books, you'll probably find some value, in the Shortbox app, and
Yeah,
which you can
I
just download
was
on Apple and Android.
Yeah, I was just looking at it from the online shop. So you could see it online, right? You could go to a browser, but you have to utilize the app to make a
Yeah.
purchase. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there plans on utilizing a browser to make purchases at some
Yeah.
time in the future?
So one, thanks for asking. We will be building a web component of it early next year. So that is coming for everyone who's been wondering and asking for the past couple of years. It is coming, and we are actively working on it now.
That's awesome. That's great to know. So yeah, and like I said earlier, is like it is an app to buy comic books to sell comic books. What I've noticed is the pricing structure of a lot of these comic books. Like I was just looking a few minutes ago, right before we were talking, and I was seeing some books at amazing prices. You had like let me just go quickly and just look through here. I see an Incredible Hulk 180 for 625 a 5.0. I see a Spider-Man 316 for 169. I see, I see a Carnage, 361 for just above $100. So who comes up with the pricing structures? And when it comes to selling, what would you tell somebody that wants to try to sell in ShortBox?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. So again, so Shortbox is a marketplace. So people, sellers list their books for sale. We don't add the price to the books on the seller's behalf. So the seller comes up with whatever price that they want to sell it for.
Hmm.
Being a marketplace, just
Hmm.
like on eBay or any other marketplace, books
Yeah.
that are priced really well tend to sell really fast. And then of course, you have some sellers who just ignore sort of, market conditions, and they might price their book 10 times more than what it should be. And those obviously don't sell. Those sort of like sit around.
Hmm.
Again, as platform builders and software designers, our job and my job and my product and engineering team's job is our job was to come up with frameworks and guidelines to help sellers price fairly, right?
Hmm.
Because if a seller price is too high, no one's going to buy it and they don't sell their book. If they're priced too high, no one's going to buy it and then you don't get the book that you want, and everybody loses, right? And
Hmm.
so we actually invested a lot of time, effort, and energy into building a couple of features, which on the app seems super simple. So, for folks that are familiar with the app, if you go on the app and you see a book listed for sale and there's a green dot and it says good price, that is what we call sort of like a fair market value indicator. So we can show you if a book is priced well or not, if it's within range of recent sales and recent fair market
Hmm.
value. But there's a lot of technology that goes in behind that in terms of building multiple algorithmic models to calculate fair market value based on a number of different factors, like what was the last sale, how recent was the last sale, what is the average of the most recent sales within X amount of time period, where it's 30 days, 6 months, 1 year,
Hmm.
whatever it is, which way is the market shifting. We have many, many, many factors affecting our fair market value algorithm. And so we're able to show sellers when they list a book for sale, if they price
Hmm.
it too high, they'll get like a nice red dot that'll say, hey, just heads up,
Hmm.
you can price it for really, really high if you want. That is your prerogative. It's your book. You list it for whatever you want, but it's probably not going to sell because
Hmm.
based on this information, it's really, really high. And we truly think that this helps both buyers and sellers, because not all sellers, frankly, especially more casual or newer sellers, they may not know how to price the book, or they just simply don't know what it's
Hmm.
worth. And so, we show sales history, we show sales data, we show all this information so a seller can understand, hey, if we're saying it's green, well, this is why it's green. So you can see all the recent sales listed there, and you
Hmm.
can you can sort of check our math to see that our model is accurate, and you can press it accordingly. And so, yeah, so it's just providing information to
Yeah.
both sides, because at the end of the day, most buyers and sellers, they will know how to look up prices and research prices. So we're just giving you all the information right off the bat, because now you don't have to leave the app and open up different browser windows and try and check different sources, and it's just all the
Hmm.
information just in one place. And I think that's arguably kind of the most valuable sort of like feature that we have on the app for both buyers and sellers.
Yeah, and I know that from experience because utilizing eBay and whatnot, which I would say would be your prime competitors, um, they don't have a structure like that in place. So
It's
with
really hard.
eBay, you put something up,
Yeah.
they'll give you suggestions, but it's not like, no, don't price it this way. Like, and eBay is always like this, right?
Right.
Whatnot. The problem I have with whatnot, even though I don't have a problem with whatnot, is sometimes you have to sell in a way that's below the market value to get that sell,
Hmm.
instead of meeting the price the way it should be met, right? So if a book is worth $100 and you want to sell it for $100, you should be able to do that. But with whatnot, you can't really do it. So you end up losing more than gaining off of that, which is something that's why I don't do it as frequently as I probably should. I've
Hmm.
done whatnot show my entire
Yeah.
time, but I'm not a seller in that way, and I'm just one of those guys that's hard to get rid of the collection. You know what I mean? Once you
Right.
build it, you always you have that seller's remorse at the end where you're
Oh
like,
yeah, we
ah,
all do. We're all
yeah,
collectors like us. It's like there's always going to be the one, or the
yeah.
or
The
the
one
50,
for
or the
me,
or the 100 that you wish you never
yeah,
sold. But
the one for me. I have a few, but the one for me is NYX3. That's the one.
mm, yeah, yeah.
I let that walk away. I sold it to someone at a con, not really knowing about it,
Hmm.
because that's when X23 was starting to get
Right,
popularity,
right.
and I sold a signed copy signed by Quesada,
Mm,
and I must have
a
sold
tough
it for like
signature to get.
I sold it for like $20, and
Oh no.
today I look at the price of that book and I'm like,
Oof.
You know
No
what I mean? I'm
regrets.
like,
No regrets.
yeah. So
You made the
one
decision
day
at
it
the
will
time.
return.
Yeah.
Yeah, one day it will return, but I probably won't pay what I paid for it, which was a cover price.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
wow. That hurts even
yeah,
more.
yeah, that's the majority of my collection. The majority of my collections, because I've been collecting since '87, is cover. When people tell you how much you paid for it, I was like cover price.
That's
Like, what do you
awesome.
mean? Or if someone tells you, oh yeah, I didn't pay cover price, like what did you pay? I got it from Dollar Bin. That's my New Mutants '98 Dollar
Yeah,
Bin
yeah.
book.
Nice.
And I got mine's there. I'm gonna take it to my boy Mike in Spineworks
Mhm.
for to get it pressed, and then I'm gonna get it eventually graded. I was like, you know what? Let's grade this stuff.
Good luck.
It's
May the
time.
grading gods be in your favor.
Yeah, it won't be a 98. I can tell you that much. But just let's just put it there while we have it, and things like that. But you did mention something that I really want to talk about, and that's safe.
Mhm.
So when you mean safe, can you describe that to me a little bit more? How is the app safe?
Yeah, so there's sort of multiple ways to look at that. Safety from the sense of policy, right, and just
Mhm,
sort of general process. And so,
mhm,
for those who are unfamiliar, we are not a consignment shop. So people don't send us books and then we list them for sale and then we keep them, in our headquarters and ship out. It's more closer to eBay where a seller lists a book for sale, and so we don't actually have possession of that. And if someone buys it, then the book automatically gets sent from the seller directly to the buyer. But the seller doesn't get paid out until the book gets delivered, right? So we
mhm,
hold both sides accountable, right? So there's a very very low risk of there to be potential fraud in terms of that happening.
mhm,
But for higher value books, anything over $1,000 for graded books, if it's over 250 for raw, those automatically come to us first, just as a precautionary step to make sure that hey, we actually inspect the book, we make sure that the certification numbers matches, we make sure that it's not cracked, we make sure if it's a raw book, is this the exact copy that was sold and it wasn't swapped out for a different copy there. So a lot of it is providing protections for both
mhm.
buyers and sellers, to make sure that neither side sort of, to put it bluntly, gets screwed by the other side.
Yeah.
And I am super super proud to say that we have never had a single seller get screwed out of not getting paid out on a book
Mhm.
that sold. Not one in the thousands and thousands of sales we've had over the last 4 years. Not one seller has gotten, this is my term, has not gotten screwed.
That's
I'm pretty
good.
sure most people can't say that about other platforms that they've dealt with. So
Mhm,
there's that from the policy side. There's just a lot of guardrails that we have in place in terms of policy to protect both buyers and sellers. Because again, we're collectors ourselves, so we know how it is to sort of
mhm.
get screwed over, either by sellers or by deadbeat buyers. Now on the technical side, on the app side, we take user privacy and data protection super 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 seriously. I mentioned that we have backgrounds in technology, and so all of our user data and information is incredibly private and secure. And so that just from a technology standpoint, we're incredibly incredibly quality safe there, just from just a pure data protection standpoint. I
That's
would I
good.
don't want I don't want to bore people on the details, but yeah, we take it seriously.
So we use the zeros and the ones,
Yeah,
and we have the
that's
special
that's
binary
basically
code.
it. Yeah, that's not much of
Awesome.
an exaggeration.
No, that's good to know, especially when it comes to higher end books, right? So if a book is worth $1,000, you want to make sure that purchase is secure. I remember purchasing a book from eBay, and I received the book, and the book was like it had like a coffee stain. It was
Oh no.
ripped, so I contacted the seller. Now, thankfully for the seller, you know, I told him, hey, this is what happened. This is what this book came as, and you sold it for this. And he was like, I'm terribly sorry. He gave me a full refund, so I was very grateful. But
Which is what they
not
should do.
many, right? Not many
Yeah.
people will do that, right?
Right.
So,
Well, one thing
it.
that I forgot to mention is that it is, as it is right now, the buyer doesn't know who the seller is and vice versa. So
Mhm,
Shortbox, we're the ones that actually collect the money, and then we're
mhm,
the ones that send the shipping label to the seller. So we're basically making sure that everyone holds up their end of the deal before the buyer gets the book and before the seller gets paid. And so again, that's just another layer of protection there. And every
yeah,
order is fully insured. So there's
mhm.
there's really like no way that we haven't had anyone really get screwed over or lose out.
That's good. That's good. And I was going to talk to you about that now that you mentioned it. So a seller can be anonymous. Is that correct?
Yes.
And but will they, if they don't want to be anonymous, do they? If that's still a possibility as well?
So the short answer is eventually, and actually, like in just like a few weeks, we're
Mhm.
actually going to be rolling out. I'm probably jumping ahead. You're probably going to ask me what's coming up anyway. I might
Well,
as well
wait,
talk about it now.
let's talk
Yeah.
about it. We're going
Well,
there,
yeah,
right?
yeah. One of them is so right now it's an anonymous marketplace. So buyers
Mhm,
don't know who the seller is, and vice versa. But in Q1, we're actually going to be releasing basically public seller stores. So like IzzyVerse NYC, you could set
mhm,
up your own IzzyVerse shop on ShortBox, and people can go to your shop on ShortBox
mhm,
specifically and buy your books directly from you. And so that is going to be a pretty major change that we're going to be making on the app, in just a few weeks.
mhm. That's exciting. And I know we auctions, right? Because your
Yeah.
biggest competitors are auction houses, really. So you don't. There's not really many storefronts that are simply comic books shops, right?
Mhm.
There are, but not in. I think when it comes to Shortbox, I think you're the top dog when it comes to that.
Yeah.
So your competition really is the eBay's and the whatnots, but eBay is a marketplace for not just comic books, for pretty much anything
Yeah.
collectible, and whatnot pretty much the same way. Um, so so you stand from a different path because yours is more niche to the
Yeah.
comic book industry,
Right.
right? So tell me a little bit about the auction side and what's your plans for auctioning.
Yeah, one thing. Thanks for asking it. And to your point, we are the biggest comic book marketplace out there. The only other marketplace that has more than Shortbox is eBay, and
Mhm.
they are the 800-pound gorilla in the space, if you will, and sort of the one of the last frontiers for us to cross is auctions, right? Because right
Mhm.
now we are just a direct listings marketplace, so people can list books for sale, people can buy them. They're not auctioned off, and so this has been a long time in the works. We've been working and building and designing our auction platform since earlier this year. It's almost been a full year now, and so we're just on the verge of launching auctions in just a couple of weeks. So we'll be launching them in early 2024. Really, when I say early 2024, I mean early January. So literally in just a
Wow.
matter of a couple of weeks. So they are coming very, very soon. And the reason why we decided to go into auctions is really similar to why we created ShortBox in the first place. And it's because auction platforms today are so bad, right? Again, just like everything, auction platforms also haven't evolved or changed in over 20 years. A lot of the auction platforms today are built on 20-year-old web technology, and they still look the same today as they did 20 years ago. And just because they've had no need to innovate or change. And again, they're not necessarily platform builders or software people. And so, it's one of those things where it's like, why do you need to go on a desktop just to bid on an auction? It's just they're incredibly antiquated experiences, and we really wanted to focus first on building a marketplace before auctions, just because we have to earn the trust and support of the community,
Mhm.
because auctions are they're there's a lot of scrutiny around it, right? And you have to make sure that you get it right, and
Mhm.
that it's a safe and transparent process. But in terms of the way it'll work, it's super simple and intuitive, just the way you would expect from just like the Shortbox app. It's mobile first. It's in app. It is the only and first comic book auction platform. When we launched it in January, just very intuitive. They are event style auctions, so very similar to the other event style auction platforms, and they're sudden death auctions. And
Mhm.
again, it just uh, well, until you see it, I think it'll be very exciting for people just to see just how clean and intuitive the entire experience is. And it's going to be so cool just to be able to bid on auctions just right from your phone, without having to
Mhm.
make it home in time, from work to start bidding on auctions, which is just a silly concept, to me.
Yeah. So when I'm thinking of auctions, I think of two different styles, right? I think of eBay auctions where you go to the site, you put in a bid, and then you wait a few hours, a few days for that bid to come in. And if someone overbids, you'll get an alert for that. And then I'm thinking about live auctions where you have to be present, you have to be, you know, fighting against someone else to finally, do your bid. So when you talk about auctions, what kind of auctions are you referring to? Are you talking to the traditional eBay style, or are you more of the fight to the bitter end whatnot style?
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily a live. Well, it's not necessarily like a live auction similar to a live streaming auction.
Mhm,
It's closer to eBay in that there is an auction lot. Let's say a New Mutants 98 is up for auction, and it'll
mhm,
run for X amount of days, and it just ends at a time that it ends. And you
mhm.
could either bid days before, hours before, or you can try and snipe it, a second before. And so when I say
Yeah.
event style auctions, really it would be an event auction, meaning let's just make up some number and say there'll be 100 books in this event style auction, and they're
Mhm,
all going to end on this day, starting at
mhm.
this time, and basically every minute each book and each lot is going to end. And so you can place your bid before, you can place it during, or you can place it, just a second, right before it ends. And so, it'll be very predictable, and you'll know exactly when it's ending, and if you're winning or losing. And the beauty of it being a mobile first experience is that you'll never miss out on an auction again because you just forgot. You don't have to set alarms on your phone anymore to make you run home and go on your laptop to open it. We'll be able to send alerts. You'll be able to watch auction lots and get alerted, right before it ends. So if you want to put in a bid, you'll be able to get notified if you get outbid on an item. And again, it's just being able to do this all within a phone in your pocket is super, super powerful.
That's great. That's really good to hear, especially because now it's focused on the comic book genre, right?
Right.
So it's not your grandma's clock. In other words, it's an actual comic book sold by people that really want to sell comic books. So that's going to be great to see. Great
And also,
to
what's cool is
experience.
that, related to what we were talking about earlier, and just in terms of showing, when you're on ShortBox and you see listings, and now we show you all the recent sales data, all the recent sales. We have our FMV indicator, which shows it's a good deal or if it's premium. We show you the FMV range that's on there. All that information is going to be displayed for all the books also. So you'll see if a book is sitting at $100, but FMV is 200, you'll be able to tell it right there, and it'll tell you right away, hey, this is
Good
50% of
deal.
FMV. Like, you should probably place a bid on it, without having to check that, go somewhere else, look it up, do this, and figure that out. It's like we just give you all the information, right at your fingertips.
That's great. That's really good. I can't wait to see it. Yeah, I already got to tell my wife, honey, I got to do an auction. So, are there any other plans for Shortbox that you have coming up that you're willing to share with us?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. I mean, auctions is the big one. That's the whole team has been heads down building that. I mentioned just a few minutes ago that we're going to be launching, seller shops. So sellers will be able to publicly create a shop on Shortbox that you can share with anyone else. It's like having your own app, essentially. Like, if you set up your own shop, you'd be able to point people to your shop, and if they have the Shortbox app, they can see all your listings for sale. So we're really excited about that. We have a lot of other stuff coming out. Also, I mentioned web. We're finally going to be building a web portion of Shortbox early next year as well. I
I'm
really have a
excited about that. I really
yeah,
like web based.
there you go. So it is. So it's coming. We also have a number of other technology products. So, one of them is called the Cerebro API. An API is a developer tool that essentially, without getting into too much of the technical details, basically it's a development framework that would allow developers to sync their inventory on, let's say, eBay or their Shopify store or their WooCommerce store or whatever platform that they use to build their website. They'll be able to sync their inventory directly with ShortBox using this development tool. And so we're really excited about that. And we're already launching that with a couple of really big and well-known and respected dealers that are bringing tens of thousands of books, from their websites and inventories directly to ShortBox. And so that's something that we're pretty excited about. But we're always building new features. We're always listening to our users. We're always listening to the community and listening about the features that they want and need. And so pretty much on a weekly basis, we're shipping some sort of, whether it's a quality of life improvement or a minor fix or a minor patch or an update. We're always building new things. And I think that's really what sets us apart from other platforms, is that again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but we are a technology platform. We are software people, and so we're just constantly building and shipping new features and improvements to the app. And that's something that I'm personally really proud of, and proud of our team for just working around the clock and just improving the app over and over and over and over. Because the app today is very different from the time it was when we first launched. It's just gotten better and better and better and better, and just lots more to come. So I'm super excited and super thankful to the community, just for supporting, especially the ones that have been around since day one. I know we have a lot of customers that have been with us since we launched the app, so it's just been great to kind of grow the business and the platform with them as well. So just a lot of cool stuff coming next year.
Yeah, and that's one thing I will say, and I commend you for, because a lot of these other platforms, they're not as community friendly or as part of the community. When I see Shortbox, I'm like, oh, this is they're part of the community. They're one of us, right? It's like when you go to a convention and you got your Marvel booth, you got your DC booth, you got your Dark Horse. You get Whatnot, you got a Whatnot booth here, but it's like it's a Whatnot booth or an eBay booth because they're just there. But when you go to a Shortbox booth, it's like, oh, these are my people, right? Just the title alone is Shortbox, right?
I really
So,
appreciate that. So
so
thank
and
you. Yeah.
there is something about it, and I love how you pretty much give back to the community in that way. Like, I've seen so many people wearing their Shortbox hats or their T-shirts, which yes, I need mine.
I'll get you
Uh,
one. We got more coming in.
so and things like that. So I'm really excited about it. I'm happy we have this opportunity to talk about Shortbox, especially in this kind of environment that we're in, and you could talk directly to the people that actually use this. So, and it's a comic book program. Now, do you have plans? Last question before we wrap things up. Do you have plans to go outside of just comic books, like magazines, cards, or anything like that?
Yeah, another great question. Right now, we are just laser focused on comic books. This is, to your point, this is our community. This is what we know. This is what we understand. I think there's still so much to build and so many more features and so many ways we can improve the hobby for the better, specific to comic books. So, that is where our heads are at right now. If you
Mhm.
ask me, long term, what does that look like? I think eventually there's a very clear path for us to potentially expand into other, verticals or other collectibles. If you start thinking about comic book collectors, we were talking earlier about, the Venn diagram between comic collectors and wrestling fans. When you start thinking about what are comic collectors into, I think
Mhm.
there's a very clear picture where you can start thinking of other collectibles that we're into. Think of trading cards,
Mhm.
trading card games or video games, toys, posters, all that kind of good stuff. So that's definitely on the long term plan, but really now and in the short and medium term future, we are just laser focused on comic books. And first and foremost, we have to build the best platform for buying and selling comic books. And
Mhm.
we're not there yet. There's still so much more to accomplish. And so really, that's where our focus is on right now. And separate from this, I do want to thank you for bringing up the community aspect, because I do appreciate you noticing that and commenting on that, because that is super important to not just me but the whole company. Because
Mhm.
like I said, everyone who works at ShortBoxed, we are all comic book people. Every single employee, from myself, the engineers, support, operations, marketing, everyone is a comic book collector, and I hope it shows, through our support and through our marketing and just our engagement with the community, because we really do take the community seriously. Because without the community, like, we have nothing, right? Everything
Mhm.
starts and ends with the community, and the us supporting the community allows us to just show up and be there for a community, and where we are part of the community just as much as a community is part of the Shortbox community. And so we take it incredibly seriously. When you think about Shortbox, a lot of people think, oh, it's an app, it's a marketplace. Internally, that's what we're actually building. But our community and the general community, we also treat as part of the company, and we take it very seriously. And so I just want to thank you for calling that out, because the team does work really hard to make sure that
Mhm.
we continue to take care and foster community.
Yeah, I'm envisioning a job interview for someone, and you're looking at their resume and you're not seeing anything comic book related, and you just say, "Okay, here's a question: what are your five favorite superheroes?"
Yeah, pretty much.
and then,
That is not a stretch. Yeah,
and like, who's your favorite Batman?
yeah,
And then they walk away and say Ben Affleck. Oh, next.
yeah. No comment.
Adam West. I'm sorry, I have to
Yeah,
use
there
Adam.
you go.
Adam West is my favorite. He's the
Oh,
first for me.
yes, thank you. I love Adam West. I got a whole set of Adam West Batman figures on my desk that I'll have to snap a picture and show you. But I'm a
Yeah.
huge Adam West Batman fan.
I remember in 80, look, going back, I'm aging myself again, but I remember in 89 when the Batman movie was coming out with Michael Keaton, and people were generally hating on Adam West, right? It was not cool to be an
Yeah, because
Adam West
it
fan.
was like campy and it
It,
was
it
sort
was
of
campy.
cheesy. Yeah.
And in the industry, there was a little bit about that's not who Batman is. But I love the fact that Batman, out of all the characters, I think more so than any other character, any other character in comic books, he's the one that is so diverse in how you could utilize him, right? He could be a comedic character, he could be a
Mhm.
serious and moody character, and it all works.
Yeah.
That's the best thing, right? It's there's
You always
nothing
you always
wrong.
believed him.
Yeah,
You always
it's
believed
the
him.
one guy that you could do it with, right?
Yeah.
He's the one character you could make him as campy as you want, or you could make him as dark as possible, and
Yeah.
it still works. And
Yeah.
that's what I love about Batman. He's one of my favorites. He's not number one, but he's in the top five for me for sure
Can I
because
ask who
of
your
that
number one
factor.
is?
So I am an Adam Warlock guy.
Wow, nice.
So so Adam Warlock's my number one,
Yeah.
and Spider Man is my number two.
There you go.
So
Nice.
Batman's actually my number three.
I'll
So
take
he's
it.
in my top three. But and Adam Warlock, because when I started collecting comic books, that's when Infinity Gauntlet started taking place and things like that. And it was
Mhm.
like the first time I really got into comic books with the Infinity Gauntlet storyline. I was like, oh, this guy is just cool. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
that's drew me in. So George Perez's artwork as well. So
Yeah, for me, when I think of Warlock, I think of Starlin. Just I
Yes.
love the whole Marvel Cosmic Universe, and
Oh yeah.
Starlin to me was just he was the king of
Yeah.
Marvel Cosmic, and
Yeah.
I
You look at
just
my
love his
wall.
work.
My wall's up here, and I'll tell you right now, it's Warlock Infinity Watch, Warlock Chronicles, Power of Warlock, which is Marvel Premieres #1, and Fantastic Four 67. Those are my books
Nice.
that are in my wall right
Yes.
now.
I don't know. This is not really controversial, but you said FF67. Is that what you
Yeah.
consider the first appearance of Adam Warlock, not 66 or
Yeah.
Thor
I
165?
think 67 is more people will it's not an Incredible Hulk. You know what I mean? It's not an Incredible Hulk 181 debate. So I'm going to stick to 67 just because I have it.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. That's fair.
But I do have the Thor. That needs to get sent out. So I did manage to get a Thor. I always forget the number for Thor for some reason. Uh,
165.
165. So I do have 65 and 66. So I got them both, which is this first covers. So I got those. So I got to send those out to get graded. I'll probably do that tomorrow, actually.
Nice.
Um, and Spider-Man for me because I grew up with that cartoon, the original 67 cartoon, which was
Yeah.
on reruns at the time, and then of
Yep.
course on Saturday with the Amazing Friends. I love me my Spider-Man,
That's awesome.
and that was that. And of course, growing up with the rest, it was just comic books, comic books, comic books. That was one thing that I was always drawn into, was always comic books, literally. So for me, that's something like going back to ShortBoxed. That's why I like ShortBoxed, because it's niche, but we need niche.
Yeah.
We because we don't need the clutter of everything else. Just give me this. This makes it easy, and then I really do like the pricing structure in place because it's fair. And I'm not just saying that because we're having a conversation. You know what I mean? Which is it's easier. It's easier on the eyes. It's easier to find what you're looking for. And if you don't have it, you don't have it, pretty
Right.
much. But for the most part, you have it.
Yeah.
Which is more
Or
amazing because
alternatively, if a seller is asking too much for it, you also don't have to buy it.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, say no to FOMO, as they say, right?
Yeah.
Gene, it has been a blast. It has been great. Is there any last thing you want to share before we end this stream?
One, just thank you. This is awesome. We could chat for hours longer, just about
We probably
everything
will,
comic
too.
related. Yeah, but this is awesome. This is super fun, and again, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you and your loved ones, and obviously all your subscribers as well. I'm in the giving mood. I'm happy to anyone watching this. I'm happy to give a ShortBox promo code, really to anyone watching this, and so we'll drop that in the description. Or likewise, if anyone ever wants to reach out to me and chat or just ask any questions or connect with me, my inbox is always open. It's just Gene, Gene, at shortbox.com. And I'm always happy to chat and meet with folks in the community. So, again, inbox is open if anyone ever wants to reach out and chat. And again, just thanks to you and the community for just giving me the opportunity to come on your show. This is a lot of fun.
Cool. And you said something about a promo code.
Yeah.
So will we have a promo code in place?
We'll have a promo code. Yeah. So, again, I think by the time this comes out, we'll have that over to you, and you can add that in the description, and it'll be in there for folks to get a few bucks off your next order.
There you go. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Gene. Well, I'm going to put you in the lobby for a few minutes, and we'll end the stream. We'll end the stream in a minute. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Gene. I really appreciate it. So there you have it, guys. Gene Miguel from ShortBoxed, CEO of ShortBoxed. What a great time. Thank you for watching. And if you're watching this today live on Christmas Day, Merry Christmas to you and Happy Holidays to everyone else. Don't forget that this coming week, next week, we are going to do the 2,000 subscriber giveaway. We're also celebrating the new year, so we're going to have some guests. We're going to do some giveaways. Make sure you put that hashtag #LoveTheIzzyVerse for your chance to win part of the giveaways. Until next time, guys, I'll see you soon. Excelsior!